section. Yes. 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 So the section is recorded. The recording section. So we're going to be sharing the link for the recording section. So to everyone after the class. Yes. So I know probably know about School and Knowledge Forum. You've rarely heard about School and Knowledge Forum before now. If this is the first time. So it's an NGO, an organization that is actually meant to actually mentor and guide people, especially undergraduate and fresh graduates, into making them ready for the job market, and for those that want to go into the research and further their education. It's just to guide them. It's just a mentorship program basically. Later on, probably in this training or subsequent training, the Dr. Tayo is going to actually more like introduce what the forum is to us more on that. Well, now let's get straight into agenda for today. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining again. So today we'll be looking at what is SQL. We look at what's even a database. It's just an introduction in case someone doesn't even know what a database is, right? I know most of us probably know what it is, but in case you don't know, we're going to be going to what a database is, the importance of SQL in database management, and then we go to the basic syntax. At this point, when we get to the basic syntax, we are going to use the online platform to do for practice. Basically, we are just going to do some hands-on training at that point, and then I'm going to just show us the different command types. So that's just an introduction to different command type we actually have in SQL. Yes. So what is SQL? SQL means structured query language. So it's a standard language that's usually used in manipulating and accessing the database, basically. So we have different type of database, as I mentioned it on. Well, we talk about the database types later on, and then for a relational database, use an SQL to be able to get the data from it, manipulate data, access it, even store data, inserting, updating, and basically managing the database and data as a whole. So the purpose of it is to be able to query, to be able to insert, to be able to update, delete, and then the full management the full management of the database. So, and I mentioned what's a database. Database is actually more of like an organized collection of structured data. Yes, so it's just like an organized collection of structured data, how being stored and stored logically on the system, maybe locally or on the cloud or remotely. So I remember in the mail that was actually sent to us, there was a guide on how to set up. There was an instruction on setting up MySQL on our local database with students. So there was the first step that actually showed that you download the MySQL database itself, and then the second that actually talked about SQL workbench. That first one is the MySQL. In this case, that MySQL is like a type of database that we have. So we have different type of database. We have the relational database and the NoSQL. But for the purpose of this class, which is basically what we're doing SQL, we are going to be addressing relational database. And for relational database, we have some type of relational database that is common. The most common one we know that we use it daily, that we'll probably be using daily, are things like the MySQL. I believe some of us already have this installed on our system. Then we have the Microsoft SQL Server. This is also very popular. We have the Postgres. It's popular, although maybe not a lot in Nigeria. And then we have the Oracle database, which is used a lot, especially in enterprise environments, banking sectors, and some sectors use that a lot in. Yeah. And yes, so for the importance of SQL in data management. So we have, so I mentioned earlier, the database is actually used in managing our database, using virtually storing database. So we have data from different sources that has been stored and collected and stored in our database, we need to manage it. We need to probably get back the data and display to user to the user, or for reporting purpose or for different purposes we might need data for. Also, the first part, when we get data, we need to save it to database. So that's part of what SQL is used for, to insert to database, to save it into database table. So update it. You might have reason why you want to change something. Probably you have record of students and you need to change date of birth of those students, or you're changing the name, or they are moving from class to class or something like that. They're changing their class. So those are some things you want to update those records. You should be able to do that. Delete records. Yes. So those are things that SQL actually helps us to be able to do. And also, it helps us to be able to manage database as a whole. So I've mentioned that we have database, but within database, we have different objects within database. So one of the most common one that we work with mostly a lot is what we call it database tables. So database is like is a group of different objects, right? Within it, we have things that we call tables. So we can have multiple tables. So, for example, if we look at it, we've seen that there is in the example that was sent to us, in the what was sent to us, we have tables like student performance. That's a table, that's a set of data. We also have other tables like the parental, some information about parents. Some tables are actually also information about parents, right? So those are different tables. So those are where we insert. So we insert record, we update record. Tables are what stores the record. But we have other objects like things like store procedure. Sorry, please can you give me a minute? Okay, all right. So SQL helps us to also define and create. So you use SQL to even create the database itself, to update database to create database structure, manage user and permission based on permission we are granting to people, because you don't give everybody the same permission because change you ask out. So it helps us in doing that. And okay, and this is an example of some of the syntax that is being used actually in SQL. Some of the basic syntax. As I mentioned, you do things like retrieving information from the database, which is more of what we focus on a lot this in this in this particular class. So what if you want to get data from database, use the select. SQL, one thing about SQL is almost like English language. There is some difference, but it's close to basically to English language, more like what you're saying in English. So for example, you use like select. So there are some keywords you use, right? Which you cannot abbreviate. You have to use uh so there are some keywords. Yes, so there are some keywords you use, right? Like the select, the from keyword, where. And then insert is when you're actually trying to insert to a table, you are trying to add a record to database table. You have the update from updating the record from database table, delete, create, alter, drop, and some these are some of the basic syntax. Well, let's do this to the other side here where we have the query structure of database. So if you want to get a record, you want to spool out a record, you want to fetch out a record from our database table. It's the syntax is is straightforward. Like it just select, then we specify what we are trying to select, and then after the from we have then we have the table name, and then in case we have condition that want to filter out some things, we have the conditions. So I think at this point, we can go into the online platform, that's the DB video, and do some practical stuff so that we can see what we're actually talking about. But before we go, okay, so let's just go there. Okay. Oh, do you all have the link to this platform that I'm sharing? We share it in our mail. We send it to us by mail, but I want to make this if you all have it. Okay, yes, thank you. Thank you, Olani. Yeah. Okay, all right. Thank you, Olani. So we have this platform, this is just an online platform. It's not the for a day-to-day work at real life work. We are probably not going to be using this platform. This is just mainly for training purpose. um, we shared a link that we should actually install the MySQL, so that will give us more practical experience on what we actually use in the real life, what we be using in our day-to-day work, basically. But for this particular one, we will we have the so there is a so okay. So let me just start from the schema SQL class there, right? Majorly what we'll be using for our training for our purpose, where we be doing most things is under the query SQL. That's where we'll be writing our own scripts. So for the purpose of this training, we've had a schema that actually is supposed to create a table. So so we have a database. So this already have a database. So we didn't create a database yet. By default, they've created a database called SQL, MySQL version 5 here. They have different type of database they've created also. They have MySQL. I mentioned earlier that we have different type of database. We have the MySQL, they have Postgres, SQLite, but they don't have it. So these are what we have. But for this purpose, for the training purpose, we are going to be using the MySQL v5. Anyway, if you use anyone, you're still going to get the same results. So it's just we're still going to get the same results no matter the database you pick. So, but then by the right where we have the schema SQL, so we have the create table. So creating table is going to create the structure, the container that is actually going to be warehousing our data. So in this case, we name the table. So let me just show. The table name here is student underscore performance. Yes, so it's student underscore performance, and then it have some columns. So database is more like is database table. The table itself is more like an Excel sheet. If you've seen an Excel sheet before, I don't think I have one. Let me try to. Let me see if I can open one. Okay. So our database table, the way it is on the database level and is something like this. So we have the columns. The columns are the vertical ones where we have like the student ID is a column, age is a column. So let's just assume that this particular sheet is a table, it's a database table. Then we have these different columns. And then each of these columns, we can now have multiple rows. So this entire entity here is a row. So if I pick a student, so this in this case, it represents someone, you represent a particular student. So this is a student with ID, student ID 101, and then his age is the person's age, I don't know if it's he or she, is 17, gender 1, so gender, okay. So I know 1 it probably represents male and, okay, I think 0 probably represents male and 1 represents female. So she, female, gender. So we represent ethnic group 0. So we have a table that actually define what ethnic group 0 is. So it's Caucasian, and he study an average of 19 hours weekly. It's absent from 7 classes. He has a tutoring, parental support. Parental support is medium and moderate, sorry. Extracurricular activity, no. Extracurricular activity, no sports. He plays music, doesn't volunteer, and he has an average CGPA. So this is what we call a role. So this is a row here. Each of these is a row, and then they represent a student record basically. So you remember, the vertical one is the columns, right? And this is the row. So when we are creating a table, because we are creating a structure that is actually going to hold the data, we are actually going to specify what are the columns that you want for this table. So the row will continually grow. We know the row will continually grow. We can always add more records to the rows. That's when we are inserting rows. But when you are creating the table, that's when you define the columns. You define what the columns should be. So that's what we've done here. We define the columns. There are different data type that is called. So we have although the data type might vary a little bit from database to database. In MySQL, we have the ID as integer, int, basically. Int means is a number. That's what it means. And then we have the age. Age is also a number in this case because we're actually just using we are just using a number. So int is a number with that is a whole number. So I think we should int or integer, depending on what we are working on, is a whole number. But we have numbers like floats. Floats is a number that have decimal points. Both integer and both int and float, they are both number, just that float have decimal points, int doesn't have decimal point. So if you define a field as int and we are trying to pass something without that have decimal point to it, it's almost either going to throw an error or it's going to truncate decimal points out of it. So we need to be sure when we are defining our columns, what the type of data we are expecting that will be inserted into that column where we are creating a table. So I'm just using this to just explain what's going on for the purpose of this class. We are just going to do a simple select from this table itself, but I think it will be a good idea to actually just explain what happens in the background here. In other classes, probably the 6th class, we are going to look at some of these syntax in more. So because by that time we'll be used to it more. So I just want to just show us what exactly happens here. So this schema is just used to define what the database is going to be like. We are not going to be doing this in real life because in when we are using the read data, when we are using the read platform like the MySQL workbench, we will have inserted this record and we won't need to do that again. So I think I saw someone's mail that mentioned that they're having issue with using the MySQL workbench after installing it. So let me just use that. Let me just use that opportunity to also show us the MySQL workbench what happens there. So after installing, I can close this guy. Okay. So after installing both the MySQL and the MySQL workbench. This is actually the MySQL workbench. I've connected to the database in this case, but if you've not connected to it, it looks like this. Connect to database. It brings up a pop-up like this that shows the database. So if you remember, when we are actually setting it up, we specify the password for the root for the root. So I'm just supposed to impute it. There's supposed to be somewhere to repeat here, but because I've saved it, I've saved my password. That's why I didn't need an input page for me to input a test field for me to input the password. And then you click OK. So with that, it connects to the database. So local database on the system. So when you are on this page, I want us to pay attention here. So this just shows us some management, which we are probably not going to be interested in at this point. What we are actually more interested in for now is the SQL schema. Do you see what I did? So there's a tab under here where you have administration SQL schema. So for now, what you're interested in majorly at least most of us on this call, what we'll be interested in is the SQL schema. Can we see my screen or is it too small?
Yeah, we can see your screen.
Okay, thank you. So it's the SQL schema. So if you have run the create database that we specify in this in the mail, you probably have this SQL training on your in your schema right now. So the syst comes with it. So these are system database. So you don't need to don't do anything with this one. What we are interested in is this SQL training. So you can actually create other database for any other things you're working on. For the purpose of this training, if you want for what everything we want to do after this training, just for practice purpose, we are using this particular database. So if we can copy out this schema SQL. So just copy this out and paste it under the query. So I don't know if you open this, we actually see this query one. If we can paste this guy here. So and what this query is basically going to do is it's going to create tables for us. For right now, we don't have any table in this place. If you see the option, there's a table. We don't have any table here. So this query, if you run this query, how do you run the query? You just let this thunder symbol here. When we click on that, oh, okay, no database selected. So I supposed to select the database by just double clicking on that database. So when I double click on database, you can see that it's bolding now. It's so database is bold. It shows that that's the database actually going to use for this. And then I can click on the execute. So also one thing we need to know as we learn some of these technical stuff is we need to also be able to troubleshoot things. So for example, when I click on it in the first time, there's an output button here down here that shows me something which is no database selected. So that makes me to understand, okay, what exactly is going on? Why did this show? Why was there an error? So we need to also watch out for things like this to know what exactly is going on, to be able to troubleshoot what the issue is. So when we click on that, so now we can see that some things have actually happened here. Let's come back to database and click on the refresh button. There's a refresh button up here, or if you right click, you can see a refresh all. So with that, now we have a drop down in our database table. Are you with me? Yes. So I believe if you are following with me, if you run that script, the create script, the script in the schema, we have this in our database table, which is persistent. It's not going to be deleted after now. So we always have this. And then we can close the query or delete the content. We don't need this. We don't need to run this again. So we won't need this again any longer. So now we have our database table that we can query from. So for example, let's start from students' performance. Okay, what I did is you can actually drag your column name if you don't type it out. If you have any question, you can drop it in the chat so I can all speak up. Do we all get it on this point? Okay, so what is the question? Okay. You have a question. What part? Where do you have an issue?
So my question is, I don't know how to run it to my skills.
Do you have the workbench already?
Yes, I have it already.
So there are some icons up here. I don't know if you can see it on this screen here. So there's an icon here. After the open, there's the first one is the open script. The second one is just to save the script file. Then the next one is the execute. So this execute, if you click on it, it's going to run anything that you have in your query here. So for example, if I just click on execute, it's going to run everything here. Everything here if I didn't select. So, but if I select it, it's going to run what is selected also. So as me I have multiple things, I can just select the part I want it to run if I don't want to run everything, and then click on that execute. It looks like the lightning sign.
No, sir. Sam, my question is the data that you
Okay,
imported to
the data itself, I copied it from the schema section on this work page. So on the online platform, from the link that was actually shared, there's a schema section here. I just wanted to show that. So I copied data here. But if you're not able to copy it from here in the mail or when we're sending the recording, I'm going to try to make sure that we attach this this schema also. But you can always copy it from there. Just copy, just select on the schema SQL and do it Control A to copy all, and then Control C copy it, and then you can just paste it.
Okay.
Just paste it here and run it. If I run it now, because I already have the table created, I'm going to probably have an error. So I don't want to run it again.
Okay, understand.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
Okay.
So let's go back to the online platform for those that probably don't have the MySQL installed. So selecting from database animation is pretty straightforward. It's like English. So the first thing is you start with select. Most things we are going to be doing when you're trying to retrieve data from database, you're going to be using the select as the keyword. So SQL have some keywords. They are reserved words. They are keywords, just like every other program. I mean, if you've done in programming, we have things that are reserved word, and you can't change them or use them to define your own things. So I probably cannot create a table and name it select. It's not going to allow that. But because it's a reserved word, so we have this keyword here that is reserved, that is like the select is reserved, from is reserved, where is reserved. You actually notice from the color code that the color that you also notice from the color code that the color is even different. It shows you that it's a reserved word. Also, if you look at the right, also you see that the create table, insert into values. Those are actually reserved words. They are keywords in SQL. So, but to be able to get the data from the table, so we've defined here that our table name here is student underscore performance, which is what we've created here. The table we created earlier. So the table name is student underscore performance. So let me delete this for now. Table name, yes. So what we are doing here is just select. We are trying to do select all from this table. Select everything from this table. So it's just what we're trying to do here, which is in this case, we're trying to select all the columns. I mentioned earlier that we have different columns that we define here. We have about 15 columns. From student ID is a column, age, gender, ethnicity, parental education. These are the columns we have in the database table. So we are selecting all the columns. That means all the columns from where the table that we're trying to select from. So in this case, we are selecting from the student performance table. So if we run this, to run this from this platform, there's a run button up here. You can see that there's a run button up here. If you click on that run, it's going to execute the query a bit lower than our system, but still it's going to come up with results. Yes. So now we have the results down here. That shows the record. So this is just the record, like the student ID, different student ID, the age, gender, and everything, every single column that we have in that table. And also because we didn't fit out anything, we are trying to pick everything, every information here. So we have probably have all the student record that we've inserted, about 2,000 of them. Yes. So I didn't show us earlier, but there's actually a query after the create that insert record into the table that add record to the table using insert keyword. Insert keyword is what we use in adding record to a particular table. So we have it below here, which is where we actually added all the 2,000 student records. Okay. So, but I hope did we this get this part which we have the select. So it's basically we have the select. So the keywords in SQL they are not case sensitive. The keyword in itself they are not case sensitive. So I could use letters, capital letter or small letter or camel case anywhere I feel like. But it's just that I can't have it broken into multiple lines as it or something. So the keyword. So I have the select, then select, then we have the column names like these names. Then we have, you can actually have it on the same line, just that for readability purpose, that's when we have our from on different lines. So let me leave it different line. From, then we have table name. So the select, then we specify what columns we are trying to select from. So our column, if we are not doing it, a star means every column, but if we want to probably specify what column to select from. So we are going to be a comma separated column. So you are putting a comma at the end of every column. So we are also going to do that shortly. And then the from and from the table name. So if we probably want to filter out some records, we don't want to get all the records. So we want to get only female students. So I believe one represents female and zero is male. You can have the where and then specify the other conditions that we want. So but the from, so our column name is comma separated. So let's just do one example where we don't select all the columns. Let's specify some specific columns name. So we need the student ID because that's the unique thing that actually attached to every student. Let me say it's like the matric number of every student. So we need, so let's say we want to get the student name. Student ID, sorry. The age of the students. Age of the students, gender, and on the study time, the weekly time, study time weekly, and their CGPA. Okay, GPA. Yes. So the column name is when itself is not case sensitive. In most cases, it's not case sensitive. There are some cases that it could be say case sensitive, but in most of the cases we have, it's not case sensitive. So here, instead of we selecting every record like what we have before, we're only selecting, these are the columns we are selecting. I don't know if you have with me. So we have the columns. So instead of selecting all, we specify columns to select. Columns to select, yes. So which we now have things like the student ID, the age, the gender, the weekly time study, and the GPA. So we don't have every other information that we have in the table. So there are times when you don't want to select all the record from database. You probably have there are database table that have up to 100 columns, and you don't want to select all the 100 columns out. So you want to just specify the columns you want to be able to get, you want a record from. And also when you specify the columns, is faster, is a lesser load on the database itself, trying to get data than trying to get all data that you don't need. So probably when you're trying to optimize, part of optimizing an SQL query is to filter down the columns you are trying to get to only the ones you need. So that's more advanced. But I'm just saying, for example, you want to filter out the columns you want to select. So that's how to go about it. Okay. And then the so we can do something. So there is also something that we can actually rename a column. we can rename a column that is showing. So for example, when we get this out, right, this is the way it's showing. Show us the column and the name of that column, the data, sorry, and name of the column. So there are probably reason why I want to rename this guy. So probably I want to name the student ID. I don't want to come out as student ID. I want it to come as matric number. So how do you go about that? I want the name in the results that is actually going to give us instead of student ID. I want it to show as matric number. So you can do that by declaring something we call alias. Alias is basically trying to like give it a new name, like okay, an AKA or something like that. So to define an alias, use this format as, then you pick to specify the alias. So I want to say matric number. So if you do that, now when the value, so we can run this now. And instead of it coming out as student ID, now the column shows as matric number. So there are reasons why there are sometimes, due to some reason that you might want to rename a column. So how to be about is specifying it as then matric number, then the column. So the as keyword is actually optional. In case you might look at someone, you won't see as there. It might be optional. It's actually optional. So in some cases you might leave it out. So at times you might see something like this. But you might see something like this where you just see the column name, then the another name in front. So it's as good as they actually specify an alias. So the second one is actually the alias. So you could have been written like this. The alias keyword is optional, and it's going to get the same results. And the next, okay, do you have any question before I move on? Okay,
Thank you, sir. Please, I want to ask a question.
okay, all right.
This stuff that we went to copy from this, like, are you going to be given this data, or we have to create the table ourselves, like this student performance table itself? Do you have to start writing it and inputting it from the beginning? For instance, if we are given, probably want to work on the data on our own. So are we going to create the table ourselves, or someone is going to create the table and then just send us the created table?
For practice purpose, are you talking about practice purpose or probably at workplace?
Yes, at workplace, or how it is normally like. Now that,
So
assuming you didn't give us this table, assuming you didn't create this table, are we to create the table ourselves to start working on it?
it depends on what you are working on. So most cases, probably the table will be in existence. So for example, most systems that they use, most organizations, we already have some database that probably there's things are feeding into. So if you already have a system, that means the table is already created. They've created the table, the DB has created the table. There are even some cases where you probably won't have right to create table depending on the policy at that particular workplace. So there might be some tables that have been created already for you that will have been created and then you are working with, because you are not, I don't think you are probably generating data, at least at this point. You are not the one generating data. Data is already there, just like you are working on it, generating probably different reports for management or for some use cases. Or so the table should be existent, but in case you are developing a new application, if you're a developer and you are developing a new application, you are probably going to create the table, and then the application you are developing should be what is being used to feed record into that table. Does that clarify the question?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, so let's move to still on the select, but in this case, probably we want to just get distinct records in database. So assuming I want to even know what are the different ages of people in this database, in this students, what are the ages of students we have, what age are they, So I could do, there's something we call in SQL in the select where we have the, maybe I should. Okay, I'm just trying to comment that one out so that I don't want to delete it. Okay, so we have the distinct. So I want to get, so for example, if I want to get ages of students in database, ages of students, what are even the ages? I have about 2000 record here, but I just want to get the unique ages. I could see from example, I could see that there are a lot of people that are 17. I don't want to see 17 multiple times. I want to see only 117. I want it to come out with unique values. So if you use select, after you select, let me type the capital letter. So, okay. So after you select, you can specify distinct. Distinct comes next. If you have distinct in the use case here, distinct, then we have the column name. So if I do the, so let's just run this and see. So now we have so from our database, even though we have 2000 records, all the students are just within the age of 15 to 18. So we have 17, 18, 15, and 16. That's all the different ages we have in our database table for the students. So also, this is just one column, but we could actually have it more than one column. So probably we want to have distinct students and their gender. So you could specify multiple columns in the distinct. So we could specify multiple columns just the same way we have, when we specify the columns. It applies to, and then the distinct gets applied to all the columns. So it return only the distinct value where everything is distinct. So let's just run this and see. So now, sorry, just to show us properly. Okay, so now the distinct applies to all the columns that you specify. So in this case, I specify the age and gender. I specify the age and gender. So, and then with that, we is able to return the different age. So for 15, so we could have 15 that is actually male. We have 15 that is female. We have 16 male, 16 female, 15, so 17 male, 17 female. Almost every gender actually have that. So now in this case, because I've added multiple columns, I'm seeing 15 coming twice because they are unique. Because as far as the whole role is concerned, the first row is unique compared to the second row because of the gender. So that's how distinct works. So it's just to remove duplicates. It just helps to remove duplicates across all the columns that's being specified. Yes, so it's to remove duplicates across all the columns that is being specified. I think that's all I want to actually cover when it comes to the select, the basic syntax for today. Okay, yes. There are conditions that we can actually apply for. Okay, let's just do the condition. Yes. So let's do one more. So there is the condition, for example, initially we did a select star from the table name, which is students performance, and this return back all student record, about 2000 records of the students. So for example, you might want to actually select only the male, or only people with above. So for example, I want to select only, I don't want to give me all the gender, I don't want to give me everything. I just want to select students that are 15 years old. That's all I want to see. So that's where we have this keyword where we call where. So when you specify the where, that's where you have your conditions. So in this case, this is the condition. This is the condition that that particular role, that particular student, or that role, this data must satisfy for it to be returned back. So age equals to 15. So now, if we look at this, we have only, when we look at the age column, only the record that we have that is returned back are students that are 15 years old. There's a lot of them, but this returns only students that are 15 years old. Okay, someone asks for I should explain the order by. Okay, so the order by that I put here is because I wanted it to sort. It's just like sorting. So it's just by sorting. I wanted to sort out the columns. The columns are different, the data that's actually being returned. Because if you notice, the first time we ran this script, it didn't specify, it didn't sort it. It was just returning as obviously. So I wanted it to be like, okay, the age is being sorted. It's being sorted by ages, by age, right? So there are different ways of sorting. Not different ways. They are just. I will come back to this. So the order by here, I specify the order by, then I specify one. So in the order by clause, I could use one. I could have used the column name or the alias, assume there's an alias, but in this case, we don't have an alias. So when I use something like just one, it means that I should just look at the columns I have here and order by the first column. And it should order by the first column. So yes, so it should order by the first column, right? So this one means order by one. So for example, let me run this query again so that we can see what happens. So without the order by, without the order by, we see starting with age 17, 18, so it's not sorted. So I want it to be sorted. I want the age to be, I want it to be sorted by ages, and by default, it's going to sort in ascending order. So I could have written it as either one, which means the first column, or I can specify the age. So I can specify the particular column, in this case age, and run it. So it's going to sort it by age. Let's specify gender, it's going to sort by gender. So it's going to, so now that I put age, sort by the age. So it's the same thing as putting one, because age in the columns here, age is the first one. So this one, this next one is 2, and so on. So also by default is ascending. I mentioned it's ascending by default, but you can actually specify descend if you want to sort in descending order. So by default, it's actually this ascent. So if I have included this ascent, it will have make no difference because it's just the default one. But I'll also still specify it if you want to. But if I say descending means now instead of starting from 15, 16, 17, it should start from 18, then 17. So let's just see the results. So with descending order, so this specified descending, this just specified, okay, it should be in descending order. So start from 18 and then go to 17 and then. So order by is just for sorting. So I just put that to just be able to explain data better. That's why I include the order by. Okay. So if it's case sensitive. So SQL by default is not case sensitive. SQL is not case sensitive. Although there are some things you might want to do that are case sensitive for some language. But for everything we've done today, nothing is case sensitive today. What we're doing today. So all the syntax, the SQL syntax are not case sensitive. For example, I actually type my order by in lowercase. I could have typed it in capital, in uppercase. Although it's a good idea to just use the same case for your code. So if I'm typing my select with uppercase, if I'm using my keyboard as uppercase, I should have used it. Yes. So I can use this. So yeah, well, the class actually we're actually rounding up for today. Gradually, the class is going to end very soon. Don't worry. So let me just explain the where clause again. So I've actually explained the where clause. I just want to worry about your just okay. So I said in this case, I'm trying to get the people student with age equals 15. So this will return only students that their age are 15. So that's just used in filtering out some records, some data. So you specify the conditions that I want data to satisfy. It could be that a student that the age are 15 and probably have this GPA between this age and this age, they are in this class, they are this ethnic group. So those are ethnicity or something. So those are what the where clauses. So this is majorly, these three parts is majorly what most of your SQL query we have most of the time, which is the select. You specify the columns. So the select and use that to specify the columns you want to get from database. So these are the columns, right? Star is for everything. Then star is like all. And then we have the columns. You can specify the columns you want to select. And then you have your from, which specify the table name. So without these two parts, your query will not run. Okay. Yes, so without these two parts, your query will not run. And then you have this additional part, which is probably important for most of the queries because you want to filter out what you're trying to get from the database through. All right. And then so we have the select from and then via clause. Do you have any question in this part? Because I'm trying to round up now. There's still some other things to talk about, but on the answer part, I'm rounding that up now. Do you have any question? Or if I go back to the slide. Okay. All right. So let me to print the data. So because this is a testing environment, you might probably not be able to print, but if we've done a select from example from this particular tool that we use. So from this particular tool, it has most of tools actually have the export option where you have the export and then I can save to a particular format. I can save to maybe a data SQL, so Excel or something based on anywhere I want to save to. And then with that, I can print data from that point. So like SQL Workbench, my SQL Workbench have this export option here. Okay, all right. So I've mentioned earlier, SQL statement is not case sensitive. If you notice, we actually have most of our query more than one row. They fall in more than one line. We have the select on one line. But everything could have been in one line just for readability. That's why we try to break them into multiple lines so that it's easy to know that okay, this line is for the columns, this for the rows. And then you can terminate your SQL query, which is optional in some cases with semicolon at the end of it. So assuming I'm running more than one operation for today's class, we are running only one operation at a time, selecting from one table. But assuming I'm doing more than one, we have to use semicolon at the end of each of your SQL query. So that is actually all for today's class. Any question? Yes, so when we are sending the recording for this, Yes, so this is not just there for reference purpose. Talking about this slide. This slide is actually just there for reference purpose. I just wanted to include it. It's more of what we're actually going to go through in class 6. It's more we look at that in class 6, not this class. Thank you. So we
Okay,
send
sorry, sir.
okay, all right.
Okay, question, sir. Please, assuming you are given an Excel table, like Excel spreadsheet,
Yes.
and are told to work with it on SQL. So are you guys going to start from the beginning, or is there a way you can import spreadsheet, like you exported to spreadsheet? Is there a way you can import
Importing
spreadsheet?
from Excel spreadsheets is not you can import from Excel spreadsheets, but by default is not in by default with it by there's no function by default that actually allow you to import from spreadsheet. I don't think this one have a okay. So for example, in my one page have a import wizard. So let me see what it brings up. So okay, yes. So this particular one, this particular so it depends on the tool you are using. It depends on the platform, the the ID basically you're using for your to manage your database. So for example, this MySQL workbench, I could see that I can right click on the table and see import wizard, which brings up this wizard, which guy, and I can select. So it says I can select a CSV and JSON file. So probably you have to save the Excel, you have to export it to CSV, and then I can now select it. Let me see if I have anyone here. Okay, yes. So I cannot specify this. So this allows me to do this. I can then select the table. So some too have this one that actually allows you to do this. So let me just create a new table. Drop table exists. And then it allows you to do this. So you can basically see different data in the Excel and import it. But it depends on the platform, it depends on the tool you are using. So this now, if I refresh, so now I have the data imported from that Excel in this table. So this is how you can import on MySQL Workbench. Just right click on the table, or right click on this on any table, and then you can select import data wizard. Just all right.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes, all right.
Sir,
Yes,
please,
go ahead.
how can we save the data from the mail you sent us earlier?
How can you save the
The data you sent in our mails.
I didn't send the data. I don't think I'm not sure what you are talking about here.
So from the mails we received today, the data was part of the mail. The data to be used for the class. Yes, hands-on platform.
Are you talking about this one?
Yes, sir.
So you are talking this is the platform that this platform, right?
Yes, sir.
So you are talking about saving this particular data.
Yes.
So this one, because it's just meant for training, so it doesn't have this is not a full-fledged database or database management system. So the only thing I could see here is you can copy it as a markdown. A markdown is empty. I'm sure probably most of us don't work with markdown like that. But if you really want to copy it, if you copy markdown, there are tools that you can use to actually convert markdown to Excel.
Okay.
But I don't think yes, so I use this guy mostly. But I don't think so. This is going to be a long. In fact, it's not copied properly. So this is not. So if what you actually want to do is to be able to export it, I think it is better for you to install the MySQL workbench and then practice from here. So with that, you have the full functionality. Because at workplace, you are not going to be using this platform. In workplace, you are probably going to be using like the MySQL workbench or SQL Management Studio or Toad or different ones if they are working with Oracle. Yes, which are all
Okay,
similar to
I understand.
Yes.
Okay, so my point is, I already have my SQL workbench on my system.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is that if maybe when you are doing delivering the lectures, so that we can be following you, if we can be having the SQL format of the data, so that we can be following you through.
It's talking about how you just copied the data, copy and paste. That's what it's talking about.
So that we can use it on our own
So
SQL.
maybe it was not there when you did the copy and paste. When you copied all of this data, all of this create
Okay,
table
all
and
these
everything.
ones.
Yes, it was not there. So maybe.
Okay. So
Yes,
what you could have, what we should have done, what you can do is, if you come to this particular link, you can. This right side is actually the schema, is what defines the database table structures and data in
Okay.
it. So you actually have some insert query here. So if you select,
Okay.
if you do a select star from here, if you do a select star, not select star, a control A, which is select all, control A,
Okay.
and then you copy it. Then you can come to your database, which is the MySQL here. You select database. So the database, when you open the database, by default, it's actually under this administrator or administration.
Okay.
So you click on this next tab
Yes.
that comes to schema. So you see the database you've created. So if you've run that query, there's a query in the initial mail that was sent to create database table, to create database
Okay.
itself. You should have this SQL training. So it might not be selected like this, that is not bold out. So just double click on it. So for example, if I double click this way, so this guy is the database in use now. This is a system database. You didn't create this one, it's there by default. But I want to use this training database, just double click. And then here you can paste this query.
Okay.
I don't want to run this again. I can run it actually. Let me just run it. So you can place this, then you click on this this lightning sign here. It's going to
Yes, sir.
it's going to create tables. So for me, I'm getting error because I already have the table created here. So it's
The
going to
data,
create
yes,
a table and everything for you. So once you have this
Okay.
table, you can run any query we are running. You can also run it here. So you can delete the query and run your code from here.
Okay. Okay, I understand, sir. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you very much. So when you create it and you don't see anything here, you can either use this to refresh, because by default it might not show that you created the table. Just refresh this and you see the table.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Any other question before we call it today? Okay. So let me just thank you all for joining to this section. So we'll continue on next week, Saturday. We're going to get the recording of this section. This section is getting recorded. We have a YouTube channel where we also upload previous recording, and this particular section will also be recorded. We also be uploaded on that section, and the link to it will be sent to everyone. Thank you very much for joining this class. Have a wonderful weekend.